Hi everyone, and welcome back to another video on the MFT YouTube channel. This is Mindy Egan. I have been on a perfect pearls kick lately, and instead of using it for a background, I decided to use it with a solid image. Now this was completely experimental for me, but I must say I am really happy with the results. I'm combining this technique with a design that I fell in love with by Kathy Zilski. She had created a card with a similar layout to this, and I thought it would look perfect with the perfect pearls technique. So thank you, Kathy Zilski, for your inspiration. The stamp sets that I'll be using today is the More Brilliant Butterflies and the sentiment from High Flying Adventure. Now, before I do any work with my perfect pearls, I want to get everything on my card embossed that I'm going to be doing. So my sentiment I'm starting off with first. I'm using the coordinating die of the image that I'm going to be using as kind of a placeholder and deciding where to put my sentiment. So I lined up the sentiment on that black cardstock, and I'm picking that up with the door of the MISTI. I'll then prep the cardstock with an anti-static powder tool, since I'll be doing some heat embossing, and I'm going to use a Versamark ink to stamp my image. Since I haven't used this sentiment yet, I did rub my finger over it just to remove any residue that might be on there from the manufacturer, and that's going to help just give me a better stamped image. So I inked that up with the Versamark ink and just carefully stamping that down. I don't want to push too hard and risk squishing my letters. After I stamp that, I'm going to pick this up and sprinkle on some silver embossing powder. I'll tap off any excess, and then I'll melt this with my heat tool. Then I'll give it about 10 seconds or so to cool off, and I'm going to take a Swiffer cloth and just buff over any excess powder that was left on there. My powder tool kind of got a little carried away, so I did have to work on that a little bit. Next, I want to heat emboss the fine details of the wings. So to do this, I took a piece of acetate cut to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I'm lining up the coordinating die where I want my image to go. Hold that in place with low tack tape and die cut that from that acetate. So this is going to be my guide to stamp my image. You could also use a piece of cardstock or vellum, but I found the acetate was really helpful because I could really see the margins of my card and making sure that they're even. Then I placed that detailed portion, I fit it right in there like a puzzle, and I prepped the cardstock once again with that anti-static powder tool, inking this up with the embossing ink and stamping this down onto my cardstock. Then once again, I'm going to sprinkle on my silver embossing powder. This is going to match my sentiment, and I thought the silver would look just really great with the iridescent pearl pigment powder that I'll be using. So once again, after that is nice and melted and cooled down, I'll just buffer over that with my Swiffer cloth. Now here's a look at some of the perfect pearls that I have in my collection. These are pigment powders, so they are really iridescent. They add a lot of great shimmer to your projects, and you can even mix them with watercolors, which I think might be my next thing I might try and play with. So I'm really in love with blue hydrangea and iris. So those are the ones that I'll be using today. I lined my acetate sheet back into my MISTI. I lined up my first solid piece of that brilliant butterfly, and I'm inking that up with the Versamark ink and stamping that right down over the area that I just heat embossed. Then I'm going to carefully open the door, and I'm going to quickly remove the stamp and place the next layer of the wings onto that guide. Because Versamark stays sticky a little while longer, I have a little bit of playtime. So I picked that second set of wings up with the door of my MISTI, once again inking that up with the Versamark ink and stamping that down. And I still have my guide in place right now, but now I can remove everything from my MISTI and bring in these perfect pearls. So now this is where the magic happens. Now, typically with perfect pearls, some of them do come in a kit, and they do have a little ink pad of sticky ink that you can use for this instead of Versamark. Either one works great. And the kits also do come with this little type of paintbrush. So you take that brush, you dip it into your perfect pearls, and I'm just dabbing that all over where I had stamped, and you'll be able to see this image just really come to life on the cardstock. And to switch my perfect pearls, I just brush off any of that excess powder on my brush onto a rag off on the side and pick up the other color. You don't have to two-tone it, but I just love the look of the two-tone colors. Then I'm taking that brush and I'm going to brush off any of the excess powder. I was having a little trouble getting all of the powder off, so I brought in my Swiffer cloth and just helped dust the rest of that away. So this is really popping off of that black cardstock. Now I'll give you a close-up look of what this looks like. It is just absolutely stunning in person, and it really is so quick and easy to do. Now, in most cases, you want to set this with a type of fixative spray. There is a type of like clear finish matte spray that you could use. I still have yet to purchase any. So I'm going to set this with a mist of water. It's going to be hard to see on camera, but I'm going to take my sprayer bottle, mist that in the air, and swipe my cardstock through. Because there is a built-in resin, that's going to help seal that. Now, if I were going to be putting this in an envelope and mailing that, I would probably put a piece of vellum over the top to try and protect that powder just in case. And now I'm going to just finish off my design with a few jewels. Some of them had some sticky on the back, and a couple I had to actually add some liquid glue to. And this is also something done by Kathy Zilski. I loved her placement of her jewels, and I thought it was so cool to add a jewel right on the wing. And that completes my card for today. If you haven't tried Perfect Pearls, I do highly recommend it, especially with these solid images like this. They turn out just so amazing, and they are very budget friendly. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I'll see you again soon.